Hey everybody, how is it going? This is Alexander Williamson here with The Secret History, living in your aquarium. How's everybody doing tonight? I am excited to bring you the fifth annual Conflict Fish episode. Now, part of what I really enjoy doing as a channel is talking about how humans and fish and society, politics, whether that's geopolitics of a region and the biopolitics of why we are exploiting a certain resource that's impacting fish or shrimp or plants that are things we care about, and also the aspects of politics where it's interpersonal, the anthropological side of it or sociology side of it, where maybe the fish habitat is not in danger, but the people who would normally be involved in shipping them is involved. So the first thing I want to say is probably not allowed to be said on YouTube. No. So what happened? I just want to clear this up. So you can demonetize content on YouTube. Now, I don't care about that because that just means I can't put ads on it, right? Okay. But it also doesn't travel if it's popular even. People have to go seek it out, or they have to have the bell on with an alert that says every video, and not even that now, they have to actually go watch videos monthly on their own accord or following the suggestions to keep that bell suggestion on. So now there are just all these barriers. And if you have a video that is demonetized fully, like where it says no content, like there's a green, a yellow, and a red category, and then there's like, we're yanking down your stream. So if I said something really inappropriate or possibly shared like an NFL broadcast, that would be down automatically. They can cancel your channel. They can give you a strike. There's different things they can do. Then same with music. So if I played Led Zeppelin, that has actually happened before. Led Zeppelin was going in the background when my wife was cooking, and our stream just crashed, like just went down. And then all the money that stream made gets handed over to Led Zeppelin's representative that has a software to pull it down. So I just wanted to kind of say that this episode, I made the thumbnail, uploaded it, and it already said cannot monetize. So I took that thumbnail down. I was like, oh, okay. So then I was like, well, whatever. I want to use that thumbnail, and we're going to cover things tonight that are definitely, just saying the word gun can get the video taken to demonetized red level. If you say it a few times or if it's in a certain order of things. Same with cussing at the beginning of a stream. Not that I'm worried about that or anything, but I just wanted to make you guys aware of that. But also I wanted to say thank you so much, because when this content isn't making any money from ads or getting seen even, so like maybe a usual live stream gets 1,000 or 2,000 views on this channel each time I do one. This one very possibly could only get like 500, because it's going to be whoever sees it tonight and whoever seeks it out. And so there'll probably be no reminders sent out of it. And it happened. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, Dr. Mazeral was saying, like my talk the other night. Yes, exactly. We said, we were talking about fish that change their gender and or sex. That was enough to get things demonetized. YouTube tries to be careful there because they think like, ooh, we got to be cool with the LGBTQA plus community. But at the same time, they also have algorithms that are trained by humans that are in countries that don't necessarily know what's okay and what's not okay in the US, and vice versa. Like if we have content put up for Indian viewers in India, we may not know their values. Like the fact, or let's use a clear case, Rwanda's YouTube. Well, homosexuality is illegal there, so they can't have anything on their YouTube like that. Or China, for instance, well, no YouTube there, but I mean, you get the point. So in any case, the point is, those of you who have a membership or have dropped a super chat, it may still let you drop super chats. I'm not sure, but they take 40% of that anyway. So I just wanted to throw a little reminder. If you want to toss a couple bucks in the fund that helps me research this stuff, lets me spend the time and energy on these episodes and on the deep dives I do, you can join as a member for only $1.99. And also that generally I will upload, not always in a timely manner, but I will upload the sources I use, especially if anyone asks, then I always do. But depending on what the video is, if it's just an opinionated video, then sometimes I don't have a source list out. But something that I research pretty heavily, I almost always have a list somewhere that I'm keeping anyhow. So now that we've gotten that out of the way, I want to thank you guys all for being here. And I wanted to tell you guys that this is going to be an interesting year. We thought last year was an interesting year. It's interesting that it kind of stopped war, the pandemic. Not completely, but definitely everybody kind of pumped the brakes. They said, I don't know if we should, go to war right now, or if we should expend troops and food and money and all those things. So there were some scuffles and things, but a lot of the potential wars that could break out in a given year didn't really happen last year. And we talked about that in the episode after the pandemic had started. That was the big discussion point last year, was we're going to have shipping issues. We're going to have delays in freight, and we're going to have regions that are cut off. And almost 2 years into it, that still is the case, unfortunately. Pete, thank you so much with a meh to the system. I appreciate it, brother. So let's pull up the first of what I'd like to show you guys and get this show on the road. And there's a very cool resource that used to be very, very on point and up to date, and now it's not, period, full stop. It's just not, but it is still useful. So we're going to take a look at it. So let me pull that up. Bum, 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 bum. All right, window. Let's give. Well, we'll do this first. If we have issues with it, we'll try something different. All right. So this here, dun, 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 is called. Can we? Why is this so zoomed in now? Hold on. So this is the, and if you go to it, if you're curious about going to it, it is cfr.org/global-conflict-tracker/. But it's the Council on Foreign Relations. And this is a map of ongoing wars at any given time, according to the UN. Now, that's a squirrely definition, because a lot of times the UN doesn't consider things wars that in all rights should be considered a war. So, for instance, the island of Ireland, or the Basque region and ETA, so whether that's the IRA or the new IRA, the last 10 years, they haven't really had them on the map, even though there have been a few things. I wouldn't call those wars, but they're ongoing situations that could flame up very quickly. And, there's also politics going on. So on this list, they have tensions in the East China Sea. It's really the South China Sea down in here too, more. But there are the Japanese islands, or are they Thai islands, or are they, Taiwanese islands, or are they Chinese islands? Is Taiwan part of China? All these things go into global politics, and we're kind of trying to stay in the realm of fish, I guess, tonight. So I don't want to go too deep into it, but I am curious. Could you guys see my cursor on the screen? Like if I'm lighting up this where it says tensions in the East China Sea, can you guys see the little hand before it touches stuff? Like right now, I'm going to rest it in Australia. Let me know if you can see that. I'm just curious if it's relaying that information at all. And let me check StreamYard now. And yes, Dragon Lair, it is all right. So good. We can see the hand of destiny. And you know, something that is definitely a problem, but that's not on this map. There's a couple things, and we'll kind of go by region, and we'll probably work our way from South America over. But first, I just wanted to point out like another example of incidents that won't be on the map, but may impact fish supply, for instance. So like the Malabar region of India. In the Indian general area, they have the whole Kashmir conflict, which has been going on since, well, a really long time, but since the 70s in particular, when the British split up Pakistan and India. And this has been going on for years and years, and it's been a shooting war. It's been not. I think the last time was 2 or 3 years ago when they exchanged fire or something. But it's listed as a significant impact on the U.S. interests. And really, this could be substituted from U.S. interests, these color codes, which is red, orange, and green. It could be switched out for Western interests. So most of Western Europe, Canada, the United States, Mexico, perhaps South Africa, Australia, New Zealand, and I mean, if you want to include Japan and Singapore and parts of China, parts of India, and the Middle East, it's your decision on what's third world or developing world. It's kind of a different picture than it used to be now. There are definitely very, very rich people in the developing world, and in some cases there's a significant number of them, but the people as a whole live very poor. But what I was saying is that on this map they have that old thing, which yes, it could flare up, and then they have Islamic militants, which is Taliban sympathetic people, but also like if you guys recall the Mumbai hotel bombings and things, that was also related, but that was more to kill Americans and Israelis. Ideally, was what they wanted to do with that attack. When we're talking about the other kind of conflicts that are on that should be on the map rather. There's things like down here in the Philippines and all through Indonesia, there are pockets of fighters who are Islamic militants. There are also fighters who are Buddhist militants, and there are Hindu militants. So there's everything from communist militants and far-right nationalists over to the religious extreme that want a religious-based state, theocracy type thing. And they kind of aren't really a threat to the main institutions of government, but they do control things like, for instance, it wouldn't be out of the realm of possibility for a few dozen of the Philippine Islands to be taken out of action for collecting fish, or, the Aru Islands, which are, hold on one sec, guys. Did you say something? Sorry about that, guys. All right. So the Aru Islands, very small island, but we get our rainbow fish from there. Now, they're not being exported in mass or anything. They are a very infrequently gathered fish. But people like Gary Lang or Heiko Blair or, individuals go to these places. So a lot of what we'll talk about tonight is, would you be able to go there as a Westerner right now? And the answer is no. No, you would not. Or at least it would be very ill-advised, and getting fish out of there again would be very, very ill-advised. Aqua Garden Zen, thank you very much. I appreciate it. The contribution. Have a good night at work. Hello, everybody that's coming in now. It's good to see everyone. Visine, Monster Fish Gal, Jay Oliver, Bell, Peplin Creek, Monster Fish Gal. So, Lori, it's good. You know, I talked to you earlier about your Clouded Archers. I have so many ideas. We'll talk later. And then Patrick, John, what's going on? Anthony, who else do we have in here that I may have missed that I just want to say hi to? Chris, Leo, WTF, Lydia, Sammy, here Fishy, what's going on? Scott, Pete, and Thingamatorium, and all you other Jerome, Lisa, Laura, Debbie, Betty, who else? We got lots of people in here. Anyways, hello all of you, and thank you for being here. Let's get right into this. And if you guys have something to add because you know about something that we're touching on tonight, please, by all means, feel free to toss it in the pot. We got a gumbo going on. So if we start over in the Americas, what's going to affect us in America? Is there a war going on? Is there a conflict going on? Well, in the scheme of shipping fish, no, not really, not particularly. Although in Mexico, they're considering 30,000 people killed at the peak of violence, and now I think it's around 20,000 or so a year being killed there, with less than half the population of the U.S. We have close to that killed by guns also, but are double the size. So, I mean, another thing where is it an impact? Well, it definitely impacts whether or not it's safe to go there. And what would we be collecting there? You know, this is a niche area where there's some cichlids, there's some kind of oddball fish that aren't super common. And as you get into Southern and Central America, yes, you get into lots of the medium-sized to large-sized cichlids and, you know, a few other little characins and catfish and things. But for the most part, that region has been in the state it is in currently for a while. The conflict they don't have on here that surprises me is Honduras. I mean, we even have forces going there. So Honduras had a presidential coup, and, you know, it may not impact many things in the fish world, probably won't. But there's always the potential for research being done and live bears and little things like that. Like oftentimes there in Honduras, they study introduced guppy species or live bears or things like that. So, or the Honduran red point cichlid, for instance, would be a convict cichlid out of that region. So it's not necessarily that we need to be wild collecting as much from there. Most of those fish are easily caught. However, there are a lot of critically endangered fish all throughout Central America. And a lot of that happens to be, where do people decide to build society? Well, they decide to build society where there's water. And basically, you know, fish are where there's water. And so we've got the goodeids, for instance, over 100 species of those. We've got other live bears, and we've got a fair number of cichlids, like I said, that are all under threat there. Now, we've got things like the 18th Street versus MS-13 conflict in Honduras, Nicaragua, and Guatemala. And then, I mean, and that's a gang war that is super bad. It spills over, and it's fed by Americans' use of narcotics, basically. But obviously in Mexico, the conflict that is causing issues is the drug war fueled by the American drug market. But they're also now supplying all over. Of recent interest is that the cartels have moved back from the way they were producing amphetamines. They've moved to a version of production called P2P production, which is how bikers used to make it. It's a much more, you need a big industrial vat and industrial size container to do it. And you also need industrial quantities of chemicals. So we were seeing the actual conflict spilling over into the Central Valley of California and things. But this gets more into our human affairs and things. The long story short about this region is that it's just a bummer that because of things shifting, now also there's a link between China importing, the Mexicans are importing precursor chemicals from China, and then they're making fentanyl, or at least adding it to things of all sorts. And then that's coming up north, and it's created an even more savage market. They arrested El Chapo, and that reverberates throughout the rest of Central America, in that now there is some instability of who is in control. His 3 sons and his nephew are in control right now. And when the military went in, literally with tanks, they got pushed out of the city and had to release arresting his son, which is insane in my mind. So Mexico is a very fragile situation. Yet Mexico City and other parts of Mexico, maybe south, eastern Mexico, are pretty stable, and there's a lot of money, and there's oil and other economic tourism that fuel things. But right now, in order, it goes drugs, oil, tourism for what's making them the most money as a country. So yeah, and the rest of the region is pretty much not the safest, not the most dangerous. You need to know what you're doing. But the fish are also in trouble because these industrial lab sites, as well as everything from tapping oil pipelines, which is going on all over the world, but it goes on in Mexico. These same drug gangs that maybe you wouldn't think that going out and partying on Saturday night and getting an 8-ball has anything to do with fish. But yet in Nigeria, which also provides all the cocaine to Europe, basically, it's a stopover in Lagos. But same with Mexico and the United States. And when the same organizations have the money to get excavating materials to pay off officials and things like that, and they tap by literally just cutting a hole in a giant oil pipeline that's maybe 6 to 10 feet tall, oil pipelines, and it just spills out, and they basically try to catch it in some way, put it together in drums, take as many as they can in a night or two, and then they'll oftentimes set it on fire or even blow up the area to just make it more of a mess. So they're trying to repair that and then shutting down the oil pipeline, and then they'll go to another spot and do the same thing. Well, it's also really terrible, these on land usually, or sometimes they're in estuaries near the coast. Oil spills really are causing a big problem. Plus, they are also refining this oil on their own. And the way you refine oil, and this is not just happening in one place. The reason I'm talking about this is because it's happening in Southeast Asia, by organized crime. It's happening in Central and West Africa by organized crime and actual government crooked officials and companies. But also it's happening in Mexico. It's probably happening in Venezuela. We don't have that much information on what's going on there. But any big oil refining region, pretty much other than the Middle East, has seemed to have issues with this from time to time, if not all the time. And what happens is they actually, you need a population that's desperate enough that they are willing to, with like a towel around their mouth, or maybe now with masks they're using for COVID, they're cooking down these massive 50-gallon oil drums, and they cook them over an open flame fire, crude oil, and it separates at different temperatures. So they have a thermometer in there, and they add either dry ice or they add cool water. And just like you would distill moonshine or something, they cook off the naphtha, and then they cook off the gasoline, and then the high metal or heavy metal content gasolines, and then the lower, and then the pure and pure, until you get to the propane and the, you know, like I said, naphtha and starter fluid, clear stuff. And they use some of these byproducts for refining drugs, both methamphetamines, cocaine, and heroin. But then they also are just selling it, just right back to their own economy without being taxed and without having to build the pipeline or the drills. So this goes on. And if you Google images of the Niger Delta oil, like illegal oil refining, it looks like, well, let's just do it right now, actually, guys. It looks like the end of the world. It is very sad. So let me look this up and I'll pull it up. Nigeria oil refined, and there's pretty good documentaries and info about this stuff if you do care to see it. And the world has really turned a blind eye to this. So it's kind of a bummer, and it really is impacting fish very heavily. So let me share this with you guys. All right. So what happens is this, and I'll make it full screen. You guys don't need to see my ugly mug. So what happens is sites like these, where people are literally, the ground is a wasteland. And this is for miles. This isn't just in Nigeria. This isn't just in Mexico. Like I said, this happens in pretty much any developing nation that has oil at this point. And they literally are cooking it, like you can see here, in 50-gallon drums with copper coils coming out. You can see the spills into the river, and it just decimates the fish. Any of the fish, it needs to be near water because, one, they're going to get those heavy barrels out on a boat and then get to international waters usually. So they do it in the estuaries and in the brackish water regions, usually lagoons and things, so that they can also cool the resulting mixture. But I mean, look at this. It looks like it blew up and then got covered in tar. And then they oftentimes fires start, explosions happen, not to mention it's killing people. But this is putting all sorts of things into the environment. And while we're looking at it, let's talk about illegal gold mining, because that's another thing that's not on the list, but is a real huge issue in specifically South America. You can see, so if we look, if we were to be looking at the map, can I put up two? Can I pop up two different streams? Let's see here. I think maybe I can. No, I can't. Okay, I gotta switch screens. So, well, yeah, okay. So if we are looking at the map again, we will, here we go. So if we're looking at the map in Suriname and in French Guiana, these regions, they had traditionally been allowed to have mercury until very recently. In fact, I think it's this coming January that the last of these three nations down here are able to have mercury according to their own governments. And what's the big deal with mercury? Well, mercury is used in conjunction as well with arsenic and sulfuric acid, oftentimes for gold mining, because you can put mercury in the water, or when you're sloshing your pan around, and in this, so watch the hand on the screen if you're interested in where it's impacting it. But it's mostly up here above the Orinoco. There's some of it going on, and then on the Peruvian border and on all through any oil deposits on kind of the western front of Brazil, you also find this going on. But it starts all the way up in here, up in the Guianan Shield, and up in Venezuela. There's obviously lots of oil, and so you do get illegal factories and things popping up there as well. So that's another spot where it's going on. But when they do that illegal gold mining, one, they just dig a pit. Then they use a fire hose, well, it's a pump using river water, and they erode the banks. And a lot of times before they do that, they will just burn the forests. And they will burn the forests. They will not stop at any village or group of people that happen to be there. And oftentimes they try to go, especially in Brazil and in Venezuela, they try to go to the indigenous people reservations or protected reserves. And they go in there and they treat them as though they aren't citizens, because they're kind of sovereign citizens, kind of like natives in the US. Depending on the country, they're treated differently in that they're supposed to have rights to exist on their land in Peru and Brazil, Venezuela. They're supposed to have rights to be out there and not be bugged or contacted, especially if they're considered uncontacted. Now, on a side note, there are no uncontacted tribes in reality. There's a lot of things, a lot of things every year. And as an anthropologist, let me just tell you this. They know there's a world outside. They know there's airplanes. They've gotten the word about 500 years ago that metal exists and that they can use it. And about 300 years ago, pretty much everyone had seen a gun by some point. Might be an old musket or something. But the thought of these uncontacted people is not really a thing. Are there people who are not in direct contact with the outside world at large? 100%. That's probably even true in some parts of the United States, honestly. So in any case, there's a lot of these regions that aren't explored that much. And what's actually a bright spot, because I got to give you something positive going on with all this, is that there was a very violent group of rebels known as the FARC, FARC, out of Colombia for years. And they were an organization trying to bring down the government. They would kidnap foreigners. They would have skirmishes on the border regions. And they controlled over half the country at one point. And for a lot of years, they controlled over a third of the country. Pretty much all the rural parts of the country, all the coca producing parts of the country was either Medellin cartel or FARC or both. And so all of this area was basically not a good area to develop if you're a rich foreigner. Well, guess what? That actually saved a lot of the rivers and lakes from being developed whatsoever or being exploited for oil or for other things, because who wants to go work and get your site bombed all the time or get kidnapped? And it's usually these multinational corporations that come in and set up big official mines, like in places like Brazil or, well, it used to be Venezuela. Now Venezuela is no longer, they nationalized their oil some time ago, and you can get into all sorts of conspiracies, or you can we'll just talk about the facts that are known here. But basically, they nationalized, tried to do a socialist thing. The rest of the Western world, at the urging of the U.S., cut them off in every way economically from the global system, as well as seized billions of dollars of their money. And then their economy proceeded to collapse when they made increasingly worse choices and clamped down on the people. So Venezuela is the only thing, let's pull that map up again right now, is the only thing on the map in South America this year, or currently, which to me is kind of just humorous in that, I mean, like, okay, so we've got the map, and South America, really, that's the only thing going on. Well, it turns out that all the FARC are not gone. There are about 5,000 to 10,000, they don't know, armed members of it still that still have bomb making materials. They still have RPGs and grenades and machine guns. There's about, for sure, 5,000, if not 10,000 of them left out of, it used to be like up to 50,000. So that is, it's good in that it's peaceful. We should be seeing a lot more exports of fish out of Colombia in the coming years. We've already started to see that. When Brazil implemented the IBAMA Council of Regulations, they also limited all pleco exports for a while, and or quota, turned them into a list with quotas, and some of the quotas were just zero no matter what, or you had to get a special permit and the government didn't issue that permit. And so all the catfish were kind of like that, as well as any apex fish. But then also in the country, you could go there and fish for those things with a permit as a tourist to game fish. You just couldn't export the fish. So people were still fishing for them, and they could claim to be fishing for them outright for game fish or for subsistence living fishing, especially in the more rural regions along this frontier line. If we're talking about Venezuela, the Orinoco is kind of there. Let's zoom in. The Orinoco is kind of there. I mean, it's their Amazon essentially, but it crosses over into parts. Here's Colombia, here's Venezuela, here's Brazil. It would have been nice if they labeled this map. But in any case, it borders it here, and then you've got Peru, and then down here you've got, you know, Chile and Argentina. And so in any case, then in Peru, there isn't a huge problem as far as violence goes. But I just want to state that anytime you go into the jungle and there is no way to govern a region, it can get violent. And that goes for the indigenous people, could be violent and not want anyone in their territory, or that could be the government being crooked and holding people hostage or shaking you down for money for just simply going into the region. But they do realize that this is a resource that they need, and they realize that this is an important part of the economy there. So far, we're still getting fish out of the region. And as of this year, IBAMA lifted the ban on, for instance, zebra plecos. They had been banned for the last 8 years, and they are now legal to export, technically speaking. I don't know if they've issued any permits yet, but if you go to places like dansfish.com, I'm guessing he got them from Colombia or Peru, but what had been happening is the people fishing in Brazil have been notorious, and they do this. And the problem is that the fish that come out of Brazil into countries like Peru or Ecuador or up into Colombia, they go across rivers, and usually a river is the border. If we look at Google Earth, let's take a look at that. Google Earth, so we can take a look at the countries a little bit better. Does that sound like The Price is Right, everybody? Okay, they need to make this smoother, the way you swap these out, but we're working on it. All right. So we will take a look at the illegal gold mining one more time before we pop off, because I just want you guys to see that this is what they're doing in the jungles of the world. This happens in Southeast Asia, Indonesia. It happens for other things other than gold in Africa. It does happen for gold and diamonds, as you've probably heard of conflict diamonds. And then you get these big holding pools like here. This is Brazil right here. And this ends up being, they'll use like salty solutions, really saline solutions, and that will allow the water to have different buoyancy properties. And then what they'll do is they'll add sulfuric acid or arsenic or cinnabar if they can mine that locally. And then they've got these different tanks for settling and for emptying the sludge and runoff that they have from what we call sluice boxes, where they run basically the water and any of these chemicals through. And then when they're down to this process here with this muddy sludge, instead of having nice clean water with gold flakes, they then get mercury and they pour it in, and you can use the same piece of mercury over and over again, but they take a chunk of mercury the size of like a baseball or half a baseball, ideally, and if they're poor, it could be the size of a gumball, but they'll put that into the muddy mixture and then they slosh it around, and it actually bonds with all the gold flakes. And especially when they put hydrochloric acid or other things in there that are caustic, and then it becomes part of the mercury. It just looks silver like the mercury. And then they take this mercury to these refiners all over the jungle regions. And there's a lot of them in those countries in the northern part of South America, where you would bring these balls of mercury and they melt them down and they separate the mercury from the gold by obviously mercury melts at room temperature. So they've got this glob that's kind of like silly putty consistency of mercury and gold particles and dirt, and they torch it with an acetylene torch, and then they get the gold. But as you can see, this happens all over the place. Look at this. As far as the eye can see, can you guys, is that sharing? Yes. Okay, good. So this is when they talk about illegally mining, this is what we are talking about right here. This is what this can turn a beautiful, pristine Amazon rainforest into. This is the Peruvian Amazon right here in particular. Scientists are talking about restoring gold mining disasters around the Amazon. So look at this satellite photo. I mean, there's a river. I don't know which river this is. It doesn't say here. Oh, Peru. So this is probably one of the tributaries of the Amazon, but all to the sides. And look at the water is generally a chocolatey color. And here is before and after. I mean, this is, can I make out the year? 2015 versus 2021. That's what this is. That's how bad it is. And that is a 5-mile stretch of river. And look at that. And that's illegal mining. That's not a big company. That's hundreds of local people that are desperate, that are mining, that are turning the river into sites like this. Now, the fact that I'm showing you this picture gets me demonetized. So I'll do another shout out to the fact that thank you so much. That is the Madre de Dios region. Thank you very much. I appreciate that, Dr. Mazerol. You would definitely know. And by the way, guys, since we have the reminder right in front of our faces, the Amazon Center for, or the Amazon Research Center for Ornamental Fish, Dr. Mazerol and his wife, which he came on and was kind enough to spend some time talking with us. Very, very cool interview. If you guys want to watch it, it's on the channel, on this channel. But if you haven't checked out his site there, it's a way for you guys to go collect tropical fish. You can also volunteer to help. You can do scientific work if you're one of the numerous professors, scientists, or grad students that we have as the community. Yeah, it's just really interesting spot to go down to. And it's safe. He's got dorms that have AC and everything. So if you're a wuss like me with a bunch of back problems and stuff, it sounds pretty tempting rather than swashbuckling through the jungle with a machete and just, you know, walking barefoot, getting guided down some river on the mosquito fleet or something. So in any case, yeah, Aqua Gardens End says, I watched a documentary. Same thing is going on with the gold mining in the Philippines. Yeah, exactly. So it's just really unfortunate. And I mean, this clearly is causing a change in habitat. When they're done mining this area, is there going to be a deep lake here now? Maybe. I mean, maybe that will open up habitat for some new species that we don't expect. But more than likely, it will not be good, obviously. These creatures usually have millions of years to evolve to things, and now they're going to have to deal with this. So, and in some regions, literally, you're getting this kind of destruction going on. And then you're getting, afterwards, you're getting the crude oil pirating. And this, like I said, this tends to be Africa more so. But you also get mines for things like cell phone, they call them rare earth minerals. We'll just keep it at that. But I mean, they're actually disrupting world trade as well. And the same thing happens in the Strait of Malacca, which is, I'll show you real quick. So the Straits of Malacca are a bottleneck in which all the world's shipping that's going through Asia kind of needs to go through. Come on. Bear with me, computer. You can do it. So everybody probably knows about the piracy that went on off the Red Sea, the Gulf of Aden area out here, and the Arabian Sea, Somalia. Yeah. Well, that was peanuts compared to the amount of money that gets taken right in these areas. So back through here, people have to either cross through here or somewhere in here. And you have a strait right here. And by the way, if you love shrimp like Sulawesi shrimp, this is the island. It's shaped like the letter K with a little hat on or something, or a tail on its head. A ponytail. The letter K with a ponytail. But, you know, think of, so this is the island of Sulawesi. So we may not have a full-blown war going on limiting fish access or killing fish in the wild, but when you have an entire species endemic to one lake, that runs the potential of, oh, this lake's popular now with tourism, or, oh, this lake is now being used for a hydroelectric dam, and boom, all of a sudden your one place for those fish is kaput. It's gone. So the areas in South America that are getting are Guyana, Suriname, French Guiana, right here. These are the three places, and these places have hardly any population. It's all on the coast, and they're a beautiful region. I mean, Ivan Mikolji, his photos are all from the Orinoco, which is up here. It's like a mini version of the Amazon right here. And then you have the Guianan Shield and this kind of no man's land, or they call it the Lost World down here, which has more open savanna that floods part of the year. Very, very cool area. And that's where all the weird plants, all the unusual tropical plants are found. Whereas you don't find a ton of the tropical plants in the actual Amazon River. I mean, it's mostly mud, sticks, rocks, maybe a little bit of like val or hornwort or kabamba, like there's kabamba fricata exists. And, you know, things like frogbit or water hyacinth type things, but not, and I think water hyacinth might even be invasive. I'm not sure where it's originally from. It's probably from down there, come to think of it. But that's only certain regions. Most of the river is a big chocolate milk muddy mess with silt and logs and rocks. And then it's either that or it's a flooded jungle where the trees are literally underwater, producing the shelter for the fish. So we also have the Jingu or Shingu Dam being built that is going to be a problem. That's where you can get also leopard frog plecos, L134s, and the L046, the zebra plecos. That's where you would get them from, and I've done episodes about that, so we're going to move on from there. But those are the big issues in conflict and international economics that are facing the region. So we're going to see, like I said, a lot more stuff coming out this corner here of Colombia and this corner here and here. We're going to see all this stuff coming out, and also this pocket here. As Ivan Mikolji was saying, this whole part of Venezuela down here is the Wild West. There are warlords, there are indigenous people, there are gangs, there are gold miner. There's everything you could think of that people feel like doing, including drug trafficking, is going on here. And the same people who traffic all that mercury, it's literally millions of pounds of mercury a year involved in all the illegal gold mining. And Vice, who's kind of hit and miss sometimes on the quality of their journalism or whatnot, but Vice has a really good half hour documentary out right now on what exactly goes into that, and they follow the mercury from Guyana and also from up in Georgetown all the way into the Brazilian Amazon, where it's illegal to have mercury. And then they show the cooking labs, and they show it being used in the rivers. It's just really fascinating as far as how detrimental it is to our waters. Okay, so after this, let's see here. Is Dr. Awkward says, is this discussion about why my Petco has barely any fish? Somewhat. You know, I'm not listing all the species in each region. I'll let you guys look those up. If there's a big one of note, I'm going to mention it. Like we mentioned why goody eds need to be collected by people. So unless you have a giant river or lake somewhere, you're not going to have, I mean, you're unless you have a giant body of water somewhere, why would you have and the economic incentive to have a big fish export hub there? So you're going to have things like Lake Titicaca might have some, because it's one of the biggest lakes in South America. Maybe each country has one or two spots where some of the locals will then send out some fish, but might be sending them down to Brazil rather than up straight to America. But for the vast majority of things, it's not going to go down at all. It's going to just be small collectors and people with money, basically, going to these regions because they can fund a trip themselves and collecting. So that's why it's so important to buy from sources. Honestly, Aquatic Arts, they buy from the people that spend 30 grand to go down to, Papua New Guinea and go explore for rainbow fish or whatever. The people who spend money to go to the parts of the Amazon that aren't traveled. And then the bigger issue, getting it back on these little boats, these little planes, the places where there is no infrastructure. There are lots of fish that we know exist. Ivan, who down in the southern part of the Orinoco, he said there's tons of fish down there that we've never seen, including cool guppy morphs or endler morphs, and literally pulls them out of the water and they die of shock, and he doesn't know why. It's a nervous system thing probably, but there's just, imagine getting a delicate species back 5 days without AC in a little cooler, where you can't go buy ice out there or anything. You either need a generator and a big boat that is your hub for collecting, or you need to fly in stuff in a 1 to 2 day period with cooler packs or heating packs, or depending on where you are in the world. So I want you to think about that in the sense that, yeah, like pea puffers, they were hard to get because yes, there are plenty of people collecting them for a while, but India was hit very hard later by the pandemic. And so the Malabar region didn't get hit until about a year after everything else. Well, pea puffers only come out of that one river system, and there aren't a ton of other, fish that we collect from that river. There's a few other puffers. There's some, big catfish and carp, and there's some characins. I like to say characin or characins. But in any case, yeah. So there's things that come. Oh wow, pea puffers are selling for $250 in Australia. Wow, Craig, thank you for sharing. I mean, I don't know these things unless people tell me. So some of that could have to do with tariffs and the fact that maybe you guys aren't allowed to import them right now, and so you're probably having to find someone in country to breed them, and that might be like one person right now, or only one person in each territory or something, because they're not the easiest to breed. But let's move on. We've got a whole world to cover. But now that you guys kind of have seen, I kind of front-loaded this episode with when I say, why is oil refining, drug dealing, human refugee smuggling things, refugee camps, we'll get to that in a moment, precious mineral mining. Why is that a problem? Well, we just spent an hour looking at pictures and talking about it, why it's a problem, what it looks like at the end of the day. And it manifests itself frighteningly similarly across this globe. Val, hello, welcome. Martha, hello, welcome. Danikin, what's up, Kenny? Welcome. Tennessee Aqua, good to see you. Let's see here. Thank you, Baron von Yinzer. I'm glad you liked the shirt. Yeah, I enjoyed them greatly. Got to see them once only. All right, so let's move on. Let's get back to the conflict map. Wait, that sounds like a rap, doesn't it? Maybe Stephen P. can do a rap for me about that. Let's get back to the conflict map. Here it comes with another fish rap talking about economics. All right, share screen. Sorry, guys. I think the older you get, the more you have to start this like pointless monologue of what it is you're doing. Like now I'm clicking on this thing and I'm doing this thing. Global conflict tracker. Could I have made a better map? Yes, way better. Because we'll finish up by saying that, yeah, there's issues in Peru. There's people killing natives, happens sometimes. The natives also will sometimes say, F you gold miners, you're ruining everything. And one of them may go raid some equipment, and then they'll come to the local village and they'll say, why did you steal our equipment? And they'll say, actually, we're not going to talk. We're going to just shoot each other. And usually it is the miners who have the guns and weaponry. And there have been quite a few mass murders in Brazil specifically, but they happen in Peru as well as Ecuador, Venezuela, and Colombia as well. So, I mean, this deep Amazon region, the upper reaches of the river, is still dangerous. There's still a group known as the Shining Path. They're not so much an active violent group like they once were, where they would blow up things and kill mayors and governors, and then they would literally move into the mountain towns. Now they are actually a political wing of the government, and there are still people with arms. The numbers vary, but needless to say, tourism and the economy has kind of united people. There's more money to exist, and so that's kind of cut back. Same with as we scroll over, Northern Ireland. Obviously, the IRA used to be a big problem. ETA used to be a big problem in the Basque region. Also, Alsace-Lorraine had some separatists. You have anarchists all throughout the Mediterranean region that want different things, that have done stupid crap over the years, notoriously, you know, like killing archdukes that start world wars, stuff like that. But none of that is really big enough to impact international politics. And I mean that literally, international, like having to do between two nations. So as we get into Africa, we've already touched on it, but there's the illegal mining. There is Boko Haram, which is a religious kind of like ISIS. And if you've ever seen Lawrence Kent talk, you know that this area, even though it's the edge of the Sahara Desert, is full of awesome fish. There's all sorts of interesting riverine fish, and there's not a whole lot of lakes. But there's another interesting tidbit here, which is that this whole Sahara region, there used to be the biggest lake that has ever existed that we know of was Lake Chad. And it was a lake that took up like this huge part of the Sahara. It was probably very shallow. And then it dried up. And they don't know exactly when it was last full. Some people say 20,000 years ago. Some people say 6,000 years ago. But at one point, the Sahara was actually a tropical jungle rather than a desert. And desertification is going on at a rate of like 2 or 3 miles a year. It pushes out. The Sahara is still growing. And whereas like the desert down here, or the Atacama Desert over in Peru and I guess Chile, I don't know if it goes down into Argentina too much, but in any case, that desert is a very, very, very ancient desert, and it is not really expanding like that. It's not, the sand dunes are not creeping outward. And if anything, it's actually, I read, might be shrinking a little bit, might be getting more dew and more humidity off the oceans than it has in the last 100 years. So in any case, we're talking about the ecosystems here, and there are tropical jungles all through. I'm kind of annoyed that this keeps popping up. Let's look at the satellite rather than the conflict map. So we'll look at the conflict map real quick just to get our bearing. Now, one thing to let you guys know is that Israel, which is underneath all these dots, obviously, there's a lot of issues in the Middle East, Syria. You guys, none of that really has to do with fish, though, other than Israel has become one of the biggest producers of goldfish and koi. And they're trying to kind of outpace Japan on that front. And they're doing really well. Now, the other countries that have some decent size exports, the Czech Republic, you also have, Poland, Germany, you have Hungary, you have, like I said, the Czech Republic, and Ukraine. A lot of these were foreign East Bloc countries. Watch my video on what did the Cold War or Stalin have to do with fish clubs. Or what? I think that's the name of the episode. Or what does Stalin have to do with ornamental fish? Or what does the Cold War have to do with ornamental fish? Anyways, you'll find it if you search my channel. Just search for like Cold War and fish, probably. But there are all these clubs that sprang up in the Eastern Bloc countries because they didn't want young men to be idle. They didn't want idle hands are the devil's workshop, after all. And so they had all these young men join fish clubs to keep them busy, basically, and also then they'd put spies in the fish clubs. And so there was this culture of fish raising, and so each apartment block with like a few thousand people in it, these big cement towers that are this brutalist construction or architecture from the Cold War era, from the 40s through the 60s and 70s. You get these big towers where they had everything, including stores or commissaries, and even a doctor's office and a this and a that, all right in that area. So they were like compartmentally, each part of town had them, and oftentimes they would have a club that was into fish and a club that was into this or that. I've talked to a few Czech folks that grew up in the Czech or former Yugoslavia, And they told me, you know, like I wasn't super aware of it, but it's in my mind as that. I guess we did have quite a few fish clubs, and we had like they had like as a considered a safe act to participate in. They had quite a few people engaged in breeding, like who can breed the bluest apisto of this species. And so all of these species behind the Iron Curtain, as it was known, behind Cold War times, so anything before 91 or 2 really, when that really opened up, a lot of those strains were collected in the 30s and 40s and then were left to be bred until the 1990s. And some of them up until the 2000s. Still, we're not buying a ton of fish out of Europe because it's too expensive. So people like Redfish Bluefish .shop, my buddy Jason up on Woodby Island, he's got a selection of European fish. You can go check him out, his website, if you're curious at like what a European apisto looks like or something like that. Because a lot of times things like long fin neon tetras, there's a lot of variants that we just haven't seen because they weren't popular here and they didn't exist here. And now that the Cold War is over, it's just a matter of shipping and getting them to survive and stress. And if they want to sell the females, because maybe they're making a lot of money in Western Europe selling these weird new fish. But there's these famous collectives that formed in the Czech Republic. And the Czech Republic is consistently the third or fourth biggest seller of fish in the world. So it goes Singapore, usually, and either Hong Kong or Taiwan, and then a lot of times Japan, and then Indonesia or Vietnam are right in there. Right in there also is the Czech Republic. So, yeah, let's see here. Thank you so much for the super chat. We are doing a Greater Portland Aquarium Society Christmas party at my house this Sunday, Alex. You and your wife are welcome to come. We probably won't, but I wish I could. That sounds awesome. Thank you so much, buddy. I hope you guys have lots of fun. You guys have some fish that I definitely want to take away from your club and put into my collection. All right, so let's look at a map so we can see where are the fish. Where to fish at? Where to fish at? All right, let's see here. So we're gonna go to share mode again, and we're gonna go to all right, so let's hit satellite. Satellite, go back to Mars. Doom, doom. Satellite, the burning car. Worried just a little bit. Sometimes I like to watch things on TV. Do, do, do. Let's see here. Why is the satellite layer not... Wait. Satellite. Somebody's probably screaming at me right now on chat, like, you idiot. Oh, here it is. There we go. Satellite. Yeah, satellite. It's cool. It's space in a can. Oh, sorry, guys. I have pop-ups on my end. All right, so you can see the Sahara, right? Well, these countries in here, traditionally, lots of war. If you want to see probably the worst war that has ever been recorded, maybe ISIS and Islamic State adds up to as bad. But for my money, no. It's the Liberian Civil War and the Sierra Leone and Cote d'Ivoire wars. Just horrendous. Horrendous things you could not imagine in your worst nightmares, like Rob Zombie movies in real life. I mean, it's real bad. 5-year-old kids, cannibalism, all sorts of terrible things. But Liberia is where we get the clown killie from. Well, amongst other spots, but in this general area. So, I mean, there's all sorts of interesting fish that you find here in this region. And this is also a very unstable region still. Yes, there's nothing saying there's a war impending in this region, but there is, the Islamic State has taken over basically where you see the desert start. that is where the Islamic State or Boko Haram, one or the other, tend to kind of take things over and say, we'll take it from here, unfortunately. So we're probably not going to get a lot of exploration going on up in the desert. Now, you might think, oh, there's no fish up here. Well, there are. There are interesting rivers that do come through here, not deep into the Sahara anymore, but on the edge. And when we have Lawrence Kent, when I go to his fish room and have him on the show on the 27th of December, we will be talking about, he was collecting in Western Sahara, Mauritania, and then also in the Gambia and Senegal, and then also the Islamic, as it's called, this Western Sahara is the Islamic State of the Western Sahara. And it is full of violence if you are not one of the majority groups. Now, ongoing, there is still literally a war going on in South Sudan. There are people dying by the day. There are refugees in Uganda, Rwanda, Burundi, Kenya. There are a few million Somalis in Kenya. There are a few million Ugandans in Kenya and Tanzania and in the Congo. And then there's a bunch of Congolese people all over everywhere. You can see how dense the jungle gets here. And then all of the lakes that we think of as the cichlid lakes are in this region. So we've got Lake, Lake Tanganyika right here. And then we've got Lake Malawi here. And then we've got Lake Victoria. Lake Victoria. And then we also have, which isn't on the map either, the conflict map. So Djibouti used to be part of Ethiopia or Eritrea and Djibouti, actually. But and then this was all either Italian or British owned colonial land until World War II. And Ethiopia is the only African country to never be conquered by an outside force. And well, the Italians for 1 year, but they didn't have very good control. They just had the capital of Addis Ababa. Let's see here. Right now, though, in this region, as well as there's an ongoing war that no one talks about out in this part of the desert. See how barren this is? There are no rivers. There are no lakes. This is like you literally bring a camel that can eat a little bit of scrub grass and you drink its blood and milk. That's your sustenance for water. Maybe a few oasis or watering holes out here. But this is the Ogaden Desert, and there was a war here in the 70s between Ethiopia and Somalia. And some of the coolest fish ever, like that Kenny has, the Sodalis cichlids, are from some of these kind of volcanic crazy lakes with like a pH of 10 and, you know, salinity that's crazy. And a lot of the brine shrimp now that we're getting and that Europe's getting is out of this region. And then if we're going back to cut back what we were talking about, the Democratic Republic of Congo, from the years where Bill Clinton was in power all the way up until about when Obama was sworn in, 7 to 9 million Congolese were murdered in civil war. So it was really, really bad. It's kind of this thing we don't talk about. The U.S. could have done something. Bill Clinton says it's one of the things he regrets the most. But there are an incredible diversity of species all over the Congo. And Kinshasa, the capital, is, you know, it's kind of the nexus for trade and stuff. So most of the fish actually come off the Congo River, which follows right here. But there's also like the Volga and the Volta and all these other Kangana and Kongolano and Kindu and Minamono and the Kamina River that all have interesting cichlids and fish. a lot of which, like some like the Enigmatochromius, that's from Guinea, the Equatorial Guinea here, and it's only found in one little river. So there's lots of interesting things. All the crib species are also found around here, and this whole Republic of Congo, it is its own little problem zone. So in the Republic of Congo versus the Democratic Republic of Congo, and then there's the Central African Republic. They're all just dictatorships, by the way, or very crooked republics. But they all have issues. So does Rwanda, Uganda, and South Sudan. This is where Rwanda's where the genocide happened in the 90s, where the people literally turned on their neighbors and cousins and brothers and sisters in some cases and killed each other. About 900,000 people died in one night when the population just took machetes and decided to kill their neighbors, hammers and machetes. Terrible. But that's to give you a setting. That was less than 20 years. Well, that was 20 years ago, basically. Wait, 30 years ago now. Wow, my life's I'm getting older. But it's still an issue. Angola, still an issue. Namibia, there's still issues. The transition from colonial rule to independent rule in all these African countries had some bumpy transitional points. Madagascar is another region where I wouldn't say it's not like a conflict region per se. There is a lot of crime and robbery and piracy and stuff like that going on. There's illegal gold mining going on, and yeah, there's things like the Madagascar rainbow fish, for instance. There's lots of interesting fish out there and animals in general. It's kind of another like lost world area, but there are some issues traveling there safety-wise lately. And the same could be said for, South Africa and Mozambique, a lot of these places. So I just wanted to toss that out there. Sorry, guys, I'm just checking in on chat to make sure that we're doing okay. All right, so as we move across, because we're trying to keep this, in the 2-hour range, and we'll do questions at the end if you guys have any questions. Okay, so as we move across the global conflict tracker, so we got to remove. Well, let's look at the satellite. Let's get an idea so everybody sees the rest of the world too. Where are the fish going to be? Where the water is. So where were the conflict zones? Just keep, if you care, if you're vibing with me here, and you have access to seeing this map. India, that's a pretty wet place. Lots of China, it's a wet place, especially down here in the Yunnan province. Hong Kong's down here, Macau's down here, and then we've got Taiwan out here. Zoom in. So we got lots of shrimp and little, rice fish and killifish. By the way, West Africa is full of killifish too. All the really well-known killifish pretty much are from there. Not all of them, but a lot of them. And then we've got Sri Lanka. Well, now Sri Lanka, yeah, it's a tropical place with some cool fish. It used to be connected to India way back when the oceans were lower. And that is why it shares things like tigers historically with India. They didn't swim. But it had a conflict that raged officially until 2018, 2017, called the Tamil Tigers. They wanted to break away from the government, and they were separatists. Lots of violent bombings, and then all of a sudden, even though the military supposedly or the warlords supposedly stopped fighting, a woman detonated herself in a church on, what was it, Christmas Eve 2 years ago now. So there is still some instability there, and it's not necessarily the wild fish that private collectors are going to bring into the hobby. it is the fish that they breed there, which is guppies and mollies and platies and discus. They're really big on breeding guppies. They're probably the biggest guppy breeder. Maybe Indonesia's in there, or Thailand, but and also bettas. So, and they have a completely different style. You know, if you look up the Sri Lankan guppies, they usually have very large tails, pretty large bodies. The females have color and the males have color, and they're into the Dumbo ears and the mosaic and metallic strains right now as a whole, the farms. This is the big fish producing part of the world right here. This Southeast Asia. Singapore is down here off the tip of this Malaysian peninsula. We've got the Philippines here. Like I said, we've got militant groups here. And then now we've got China cracking down on the Uyghurs up here. There are supposedly detention camps and maybe you could call them concentration camps, definitely labor camps. North Korea is doing some of that too. Obviously, they always do. They actually rent out their enslaved people who are political prisoners to Russia, and Russia gets to use them because Russia agreed to protect some transport and trade that they're not supposed to agree to. Same with China protecting North Korea. In any case, so Japan is another one that's nice and safe and stable. But rice fish are becoming more and more popular. Koi are always popular, but since the 80s, they've been very popular. Well, first the 1880s, and then again in the 1980s, they were very popular when everybody was turning Japanese. I think they're turning Japanese. I don't think that song's about anything Japanese, though. So, yeah, let's see here. Like we mentioned, the Malabar region in India, more fish breeding is happening in India, but it's more to supply the rest of the impoverished countries surrounding it. It's just because it's hot and there's water and it rains and there's a wet, dry season cycle. If you look at the entire world, you'll notice that almost all of our fish come from, here's the equator here, come from, roughly the equatorial regions. Most of our fish, like right here, boom, there's Ecuador, there's Peru, Bolivia. Earlier, I think I pointed to Ecuador instead of, when I said Ecuador, I think I pointed to Bolivia, word-wise. Sorry, guys. Yeah, for the most part, we don't get a lot of fish out of Africa other than collectors who go there. And it is very unstable, so we probably won't get a whole lot. We'll probably be relying more on farm-bred stuff. So again, we come back to the fact of, are the fish being protected by these warring conflicts and the shutdown that's going on due to the coronavirus, or is it causing people to get desperate and use different resources and say, screw it, we need to survive, we're cut off economically right now? It could go either way. So you really want to keep an eye on the stories. If there's a fish you love and you know that it comes from, like for instance, the mormyrids that come from the Nile in Egypt, Sudan, and South Sudan. If you love elephant nose fish, maybe keep an eye on the politics of the Aswan Dam. Egypt controls a dam, Sudan controls a dam, and then Ethiopia controls a headwater dam that threatens to cut off the water to everyone. And so there's lots of politics going on there. Almost certainly the world community wouldn't let that happen, but that's a threat of what could happen. Is look up that if you're interested in dam politics. So now we get over to this region where all the fish are kind of coming from. Well, they come from Japan too, and Taiwan has very quality shrimp and fish. But the Philippines, Indonesia, Papua New Guinea, this is still part of the Philippines here. Then we got Australia, New Zealand, and Micronesia. Not much to speak of going on out there, but there are interesting gobies species, Stiphodons, that I happen to care about that are being discovered and that exist. Most of them cling a little closer to the continental shelf, but there are some like as far flung as Hawaii. If you're not from America, maybe even if you're from America, do you guys know how far out and how south Hawaii is? It is our most southern point. That is Hawaii, right? Right there, that's Hawaii. And if you look at it, I mean, it's like Mexico City south. And it is like almost, not quite, midways, like out here somewhere. Halfway, the way the world curves, kind of, you have to do a little bit of a U shape. If you're flying to Japan and you don't go the polar route, the Arctic route, you would do this big curve around the Earth, and it's like 2,000 miles from any land. Just throwing that out there. And there's freshwater fish that live there. How did they get there? Well, they must have swam. But again, Papua New Guinea, Borneo, Sulawesi, these regions all have a ton of potential for new fish. Fish we haven't seen yet. Maybe fish that the locals know about or science knows about, but we haven't gotten hip to. And it is going to take somebody going there and collecting them and bringing them back small scale. Realistically, it'll probably be a German. They seem to have their they're pretty good at doing that. But also Borneo and Java, Sumatra. I mean, Timor. All these places have lots of rainbow fish, lots of little pseudomagills. And obviously there are issues going on in northern Australia that have to do with conservation or climate change. The reefs have changed a bit, is an understatement, like the Great Barrier Reef. And then also you have the Banda Sea here, which these islands all used to be connected, or not all, but most used to be connected. And because of that, they're very old volcanic islands in a lot of cases. And they have really interesting fish and shrimp species. Like Sulawesi has like several hundred species of freshwater shrimp. The Lake Sulawesi in the center of the island of Sulawesi, it actually has, I want to say like 68 species alone of like, that's Lake Poso. But where's Lake Sulawesi? Maybe that is the one that they just call Sulawesi because it's the name of the town there. Sorry, guys. I'm operating on the fly. I don't want to tell you a lie. I want to make sure this is not Lake Sulawesi. No, okay. So this is like where Malawa shrimp are from is a spot over here, a lake over here. And so this may look like not that big of an area or something, but this is a very big area. This is a lot of land. If you zoom out and you keep in mind that K-shaped island, and you were to lay that K-shaped island out, it's probably, I wish I had the little legend. I don't know why it's disappeared on me, but oh wait, here's why. View, zoom out. Let's do it again. Zoom out. Enhance. Enhance. All right, well, I guess it's not going to help me at all and give me the size of the island. But it's a freaking big island, okay? This is the size of the entire United States. If you guys didn't know, y'all didn't know, Australia is the size of the United States of America. mainland. It would go from New York to LA if you put it over the country. So this island is like, I don't know, Montana size, half of Texas, something like that. Just making things up here, but yeah, it's a good size amount of land, and a lot of the islands that are out here. A lot of them are a good size amount of land. You know, the Dragon Goby, that is a new find from Taiwan, and so they are still finding new stuff from all these regions. But let's get to the last of the conflicts, because that's what we're here to talk about, right, guys? The interpersonal and political problems that may impact our hobby. And if we get back to the global conflict tracker, there's not much listed there other than China causing things. Other than that, which is pretty biased towards the U.S. If you live in China, you probably wouldn't agree with that. You'd probably say, oh, Japan's causing the problems or Taiwan's causing the problems. So I'm not going to get into all that, but there's issues with the sea out here. And there's issues, I'm just going to throw them under the bus because they deserve it. But China is also fishing the hell out of everything. Now, the U.S. has done that at times, including whaling and stuff too. But the time's over now. We need to all stop that, because they're depleting the fish off of Western Africa and off of the Eastern Horn of Africa. They did it off of the coast of Somalia so bad that's why the pirate groups formed. Was the government collapsed, there was still a Coast Guard and Navy, and they used the old boats to go out and say, get out of our area. And when they wouldn't get out of the area, they said, okay, fine, we'll give us some money from your catch. And so they started paying these tolls or ransoms to fish in that area. But then after that, this is what I wrote my thesis on for history, by the way, was piracy in Somalia and what was the root cause of it. It ended up being a 78-page paper instead of a 20-page paper. You guys expect that from me? I mean, I wouldn't. I'm always very concise and to the point. All right, so Mediterranean Sea coming through here, through the Strait. Remember when that one ship ruined half the world's transport because it got stuck in the Strait, the Suez Canal? Well, that can happen too. So remember that as a thing that happens. You could basically stick a ship there and a ship. Oh, another big piece of news for the trade world, be it fish or whatever. Hopefully the fish will be coming airmail rather than freight, but it may matter for aquarium supplies and things like that, lights and goods. The Chinese are looking at building a second canal. So yeah, we have the Panama Canal right here. Well, they're looking at building one right here that goes through this big old lake in Nicaragua. And I think that's it. Or was it Guatemala? No, I think it's Nicaragua. I don't remember for sure. Look it up. They have a couple different routes they've proposed, but they want to make a bigger canal for their giant super tankers, even though they did just make a bigger canal out of the Panama Canal. But they want their own area that is like out of the influence of America, which meddles in these countries a whole lot and says, you know, supports them in various ways. What is this lake? I've never noticed this lake. Oh, is that an inlet? What's going on here? Maracaibo. I'd never noticed that before. That is a big old inlet. I'm curious if that's drainage or like water, fresh water that's draining out like a lake, or if that's a certified saltwater inlet. Okay. Anyways, doesn't matter. You know, by the way, that fresh water reaches 200 miles out to sea. You can drink the water up to 50 miles out in when you're on. If you're on a boat heading out straight from the mouth of the Amazon, you can drink the surface water because it's fresh water up to 50 miles out to sea. Thought that was a cool fact. Okay, so finishing up the flicking of Kong. We got the Shan region of Myanmar, one of my very favorite regions. This is where all my favorite little nano fish come from. And I don't know why. I was like, why is the resolution so terrible? But they had a military junta running the country for a long time, and then Aung San Suu said was like, no, we're gonna free people, and they were like, yeah, let's do that in 2008-ish, 10-ish, and then a lot of people accused her of being corrupt again after she got the Nobel Peace Prize, and then now she's on house arrest still. And now the military's in charge again. And there's a picture of this girl doing yoga in the center of, where was it? Rangoon or something? No, where was it? In any case, it's their the government capital, like Mandalay or something. And they went. There's tanks rolling by, and she's literally got headphones on, and she's leading a like daily YouTube video doing like yoga poses to like some K-pop music or something, like not slow yoga, like jazzercise yoga, like aerobic yoga. And they're just rolling in with the trucks and the tanks like right behind her. It's such a surreal thing. Last year's conflict video, the conflict outlook video, has that as the screenshot. If you're curious, if you go back, if you're curious to see how my predictions went. So in any case, here we've still got the Rohingya people that don't have a place to go. A few 100,000 of them, upwards of 1 million with ancestry in the Rohingyas. But they're basically genetically now they know an Indian group that then moved around. They moved up north, and then they moved over all the way, gosh dang it, they moved all the way down into Thailand and Cambodia, and then they wandered back, and nobody wanted them for the last 1,000 years, basically. And they did have a presence in Myanmar for a long time, and Bangladesh, and then they tossed them out recently. And the Buddhists, and they happen to be Muslim, and they go back and forth. There's these Buddhist ultranationals that keep killing them and murder and rape and burning down villages. And it's been tit for tat, back and forth for a long time now. As far as farther into Myanmar, on the border of Laos, the border of China, and then the border of Thailand, this is where the celestial pearl, like this whole watershed on this part here, you got Lake Inle up in here, and your rummy nose rasboras and all that stuff. So this lake system, this is their big reservoir. And then, man, this is all being slow. Sorry, guys. It's probably going to not even let me zoom in after all this. And then here, did they make the whole thing? I think they made it a National Heritage Site. So this is the Irrawaddy lake there, which is also super cool. That's where we get a lot of batis, the Mandalay batis, even though Mandalay is nowhere nearby. And then you've just got these really unique water systems in here. See, why is it all pixelated? It's driving me insane. But in the Shan region and then the Wa region, you get a lot of issues. There's a lot of ethnic hill tribe groups that are all saying they control the region. And that's also where like Celestial Pearl Danios and Tinwini Danios and Erythromicrons and Rosy Loaches and the red tail Lake Inlay Loach that I have a couple of. Chocolate Gouramis start kind of up there, and then they continue various forms and types all down through this region. But this whole area is known as the Golden Triangle, and they busted the biggest amphetamines bust they've ever found anywhere in the world. It was like 1,000 metric tons of the stuff. So 1,000 pounds. Was that 1,000,000 pounds of it that was probably bound for China and mostly Asia, maybe Indonesia too. But it turned out that it's probably Chinese precursor material. But in any case, these guys, this super poor region where people live on less than $1 a day. Laos is routinely the poorest country in Asia, period. And it's been finally getting some tourism. And since the Vietnam War, Laos and Cambodia were also being bombed because they were being used also. And it was like this secret part of the war. Go look up history if you're interested. But the U.S. bombed the heck out of those areas. More bombs than were dropped in all of World War II were dropped, and the forest was decimated. I mean, there was a rhino species, there was tigers, all sorts of stuff in that region that just got wiped out within that time period. And now industry and things are continuing to wipe out the animals there. And you know, same with, you got orangutans and or orangutans, wise men of the forest. You know, you've got different like the Javanese rhino, the Java tiger, Sumatran tiger, that there's either none of or only a few left of. And also these regions, palm oil is taking over. So it's not really a human conflict per se, but you have areas that were supposed to be set aside for tribal groups that are now getting lit on fire, and then cows are grazing. And the same thing is true of Brazil. Last year and the year before, both seasons, people lit everything on fire. Farmers lit the forest on fire with gasoline and fertilizer bombs made out of petrol. And they burned the forest down so that they could clear it for cattle ranching and then palm oil plantations. Another little tidbit is in this region, right in Thailand here, as well as in Myanmar, those fish were not discovered until 2006. All the celestial pearl danios and little critters like that. So there are a lot of places, if you count Africa, maybe even parts of India, parts of China, where there may be these teeny tiny cool little fish. Maybe even there's some cool big fish that we've never seen or discovered yet, that are just waiting to be uncovered. Now, other than that conflict with the Muslims versus the Buddhists, Thailand has a monarchy still, and there is potential for an overthrow with the different color. They have 3 parties with different colors. They call them the colors parties. But the monarch party versus the Democratic Republic Party is definitely something that could flare up. Since 2010, that's been happening, where they shut down the airport with protests and things, and then nothing comes of it, or they crack down. But these regions are all where we're buying our cheap fish from. If it's not from Florida and it's cheap fish at PetSmart, Petco, any big box pet store, this region right here, this is where the buck stops. It's coming out of one of these countries. If it's expensive fish, now Israel's in the running, but Eastern Europe and Central Europe, and then Hong Kong, Singapore down here, Hong Kong up here, Taiwan, and Japan are big. But like I said, Germany, even the Netherlands too. Germany, the Netherlands, Poland, Ukraine. Okay, so Ukraine, we didn't mention that. But now there are Russian troops amassing at the border. And Joe Biden said, don't do that, because we won't send troops in if you do. So I'm sure Vladimir Putin won't do anything further. But that's not a huge pet fish supplying region. It's just something to be conscious of that could really F with economics in the region. I mean, just like a war with Iran could too, if that kicked off. or leaving Afghanistan, and there's things that could obviously come out of the blue. Not really out of the blue. They're all in the making for a long time. But there's things that could kick off and destabilize the world economy even more. But right now, we're waiting. We've got until Christmas to get things off boats, and that is just not going to happen, Jack. So if you're expecting to have full shelves, don't because that just won't be a thing. So they expect March or April to be when they finish unloading Christmas tchotchkes from ships in that are waiting off the coast, or that are maybe still even in their home port. So that's kind of the rundown, you guys. Did I miss anything? If you're watching and you're in chat and you're still kicking it live, do we have any questions, thoughts, anything like that? This year we kind of looked at a pretty human aspect of it, and I'm hoping that via that human aspect of things, you guys are all smarties and will be able to extrapolate what it means that those things are going on there to the fish population once we kind of looked at, for instance, what the gold mining does, what the rare earth metal mining does, same thing. What deforestation, forest fires do, what stealing oil from oil pipelines does. And then the fact that, yes, there are other conflicts going on. The Middle East has more than enough to have an entire channel on. But other than maybe goldfish and some arowana, high-end stuff, some koi, because, you know, same with racehorses for that matter, there's not a lot to talk about there in terms of fish, it impacting fish. So again, this won't be monetized. So if you enjoyed this and you want to, share this, I would appreciate it greatly. And then there's obviously the banner running on the bottom. If you do want to donate to the cause later, if you're in the replay gang, or if you are here now and don't want to do a super chat where they take 40% and then taxes take 27%, if you just want the government to take 27%, then you can hit me up on PayPal or Venmo. And that info is either in the description or down scrolling at the bottom of your screen right now. But because of members and because of the folks who super chat, I have the time to do these episodes, to spend all year, hours throughout the year, delving into these things. And hopefully it provides some context into how we got where we are. And when you find out, oh no, there's no fish coming out of Lake Inle and that region, oh, well, it's because there's drug lords that run it, and it traditionally was a heroin hotbed, and now it's turned into a meth or amphetamine manufacturing region run by warlords that are fighting the government, which just had a civil war with the democratic people versus the military people. Oh, there's a couple problems going on in Myanmar, aka former Burma. And in the case of them, they preserved their military dictatorship, preserved Lake Inle. It was like this jewel of an untraveled place. Cambodia, the same thing kind of happened. As horrible as the government was, it did preserve some things because it never developed. It was kept agrarian. Dragon Lair, thank you, Alex. Great to see all of our awesome Australian Fish Fam members here. Yeah, for sure. Lots of Australians tonight. Right on. Heidi Lynn, what is the travel experience like for the fish coming from overseas? Right now, a lot of fish are coming, you know, they're trying to make it overnight, which really means 36 to 48 hours. Generally, if they're coming out of Asia and coming into like New York or East Coast, about 36 hours LA if they're coming into the West Coast. It looks different for every country, but if we're talking about the US, it's basically they come from say they come from Indonesia. So they'll round up all the fish that are going out on an order next week. They'll put them in either quarantine or holding pens. They won't feed them. They'll give them usually drugs and antibiotics and fish guts, you know, all sorts of good protein and stuff before that. Then they'll starve them after they're done purging all that and the worms and other things in their gut. And then with levamisole, Canaflex, things like that, and industrial grade stuff. A lot of times they'll have been giving them steroids and juicing them, as we talked about in the Mazerol episode when I interviewed Dr. Mazerol recently. And also when we talked about when I talked with Dan Connor of the Aquarium Insider, who was a Florida farmer, we talked all about what it looks like if you're going from Indonesia to America. So if you want it in full depth, you can watch that episode from a week ago. We've had a lot of great guests this month. I tried to kind of make it a Christmas month, but yeah. So they were juicing up the fish, and hey, what's going on? He's still here. He's stuck with me. Oh my goodness, what a champ! And so they juice up the fish long term, and then oftentimes right beforehand. Sometimes they give them a sedative, or they put them in like methaqualone or something like that, and methylene blue, and then they put the little ammonia absorbers in. Then they send them over here. There's also a fish news one I did, if you search, where they found a way, and it's still probably a ways off. They found a way to preserve fish in a Ziploc bag without water. And it was so they could get fish, Medaka rice fish, to the space station. But they found a way to infuse their blood system with a, I can't remember what the word they used was, but they turned the gas into some water-soluble liquid, and then they had a lipid attached to that. And so it was like at a certain rate, depending on how much lipid was attached to the substance, it released the oxygen, the O2 off, and kept the fish from going brain dead and tissue death, necrosis. And so there hopefully maybe some better way to ship fish in the future, but right now it's put them in a bag, sedate them, slow their metabolism down, don't give them food, keep it dark in the bag, hopefully give them, keep the heat regular, so insulate it from too hot or too cold. Then they get here, they're really stressed. Then they get offloaded either to a transshipper or a wholesaler, or sometimes your local shop may import them if they got a business license and they're studious folks. And then if you go to your local shop, you've got them, and they will usually, if they're doing their due diligence, they will do that again. They will take care of their parasites and all the fin nipping, and depending on the fish, could be 50% death rate, could be 2% death rate. And generally price is reflected in that, but not always. If we're talking about fish that are collected off of Lake Inle, there are some exported by the Tin Winnie company out of Thailand, and that's who the Tinwin, I should say, the Tinwinii Danio, or the gold ring Danio, which I love, and they're up in my tank right there. They are named after that transshipper slash expedition owning place and shipping thing. And so sometimes they'll use them, they'll ship them in like breather bags or whatever, but they'll put them in breather bags and they won't let them eat. So they'll catch them in Lake Inle. They'll go to a facility right next to the lake that has a little bit of technology and infrastructure. They'll fast them and give them some vitamins. And then they will put them in breather bags, and they'll literally pack them out for a day or two, because that's the only way in some spots. Then they'll get on a bush plane, and they'll fly on a plane over into Thailand, and hopefully not get shot down by the rebels. And then they don't worry, they pay them off, and it's the rebels that do it to make money. So they then fly into Thailand, and then that's a regional distributor out in the jungle. So the ones we're talking about are usually in like Bangkok or, other bigger cities. So yeah, Definitely. Leo says, why don't we use black fish bags instead of clear? For ease of counting and making sure they're alive, and for the people, it's easier for commerce to go on. For the fish, it's probably worse. But that's a good question. It's not a bad idea to do that. But yeah, I mean, if you exactly what Dr. Mazerall just said there, hard to see in a black bag if fish are alive. Having them opened up so many bags of DOAs in my life, they go off and smell bad. Yeah, and then you wouldn't know, like, because a lot of times people are peeking in the whole journey, like, well, not the whole journey, but different stages along this journey, because we just described the journey to get it to fly out of the country. So then it goes on a plane. Hopefully the plane has no delays or layovers or rerouting, and the cargo doesn't get lost or anything. So then it comes and lands, and then it goes to a transshipper wholesaler. They quarantine it, hopefully. Then they'll sell it to the local stores. So, for instance, like Aquahuna. You guys watch Aquarium Co-op, for instance? Aquahuna is the big distributor for the Seattle area for our local stores. So they, or the Cichlid Exchange down in Portland, they get the rare stuff out of Africa and farther flung places where it's kind of custom tailored to what they need. So they bring them in and they breed them down there at the Cichlid Exchange too, which is also the wet spot. And then, or Aquatic Arts for that matter, they import them too. And then they bring them in from there to the local pet stores. And then they come to your house after a car ride in your car. And, you know, the other thing about black bags is outside, they're going to trap heat. The fish will die quicker because of the heat. But if you look at, yes, exactly what Amazon Research Center said, or Dr. Mazerall, is that many exporters do use bags with the bottom being dark. He says black, but I've seen blue, like ADA bags. They're all, the bottom half is blue or green, and then the top is clear. So you can still look down into it. And same with a lot of shrimp exporters. They used to have like a 50% death rate throughout the 2000 to 2010 era. Like that was a normal rate of death. And now they've got it down to like maybe 2 to 5% death rate on transit. So it's getting better. But when you have a wait at the airport and then you don't have enough couriers, or they overbooked cargo for a ship, and so something gets bumped onto an airplane, or vice versa, gets bumped off the airplane, fish die. They're waiting in line and they die. And lots of that is going on right now. And it's why responsible sellers shut down this time of year in the US. Like Aquatic Arts, the 16th of the month is the last day you will get a fish for the rest of 2021. And that is because every year they would lose a certain amount. Yes, they made profit if they stayed open another week or two, but to them, the ethics of it were not fair. To have overnight shipping take 4 or 5 days and it to be cold like it is in the winter. Leo, I'm glad to send you down rabbit holes. It's how we should love to learn, right? Discordia creates. Good to know. I found this channel the other day trying to ID a fish. Well, lots of us can help you. We have a Facebook group where you can join and get some help, or you can message me on Facebook or Instagram. You can describe it. You could play charades with us or Pictionary. And yeah, I don't know. There's also an Instagram group. There's not a Discord yet, but that's probably in the works because everybody's bugging me about it. But again, this is always a 2-hour special every year, or hour and a half. I'm going to try to end it right around 2 hours, which we're at right now. I want to thank you all so much. Sorry that it wasn't like, hey, I'm helping you with your tanks tonight kind of a stream. But I hope that to some of you, some of this info is new or at least interesting. And I will be back on Tuesday, and I will have more content in the meantime. Also, I just did a video on jackfruit leaves that's about 30 minutes long, and that sounds ridiculous, but this plant is incredible, and there are a lot of studies. If you go to Google Scholar and type in jackfruit leaf, or look up the Latin name and type that, and then medicinal or medicine, it'll blow your mind. Cinnamon too. That's another one. Tea tree, cinnamon. There's a lot of trees that will blow your mind. Ayahuasca, that'll blow your mind. All right, guys. Well, I am demonetized. That's why I said that. But again, thank you for the support. You guys rock. And I hope everybody has a awesome weekend. I'm done for the night. I'm out of here. Houston, good night. All right, everybody. Have a wonderful time. As I said, don't forget to check out a few things. The Amazon Research Center. If this episode interested you and you want to go to some of these places, you want to help save these places, that's a good place to start. They actually facilitate people coming down to the Peruvian Amazon, the safest part of the Amazon, and checking it out for themselves, checking it out for yourselves. Also, this time of year, they could really use donations. They're doing good work. We're doing conservation work. Dragon Lair, the video has audio. It didn't load at first is what happened, but it's good now. Like the first 60 people were like, the jackfruit video doesn't have audio. And I was like, what? And then there was audio and I couldn't figure out what's going on. But it like didn't load fully. So check it out again if you're interested. But in any case, thanks for sticking around. Those of you who are around for these episodes, you are what makes the channel go around. My mods and admins, thank you so much. Lori, you rock. I appreciate you so much. I hope your clouded archer fish are doing really good. I love those fish. I'm gonna have to see them soon. And then what was I gonna tell you guys also? Oh, Aquatic Arts, the last day they're shipping is going to be the 16th because of the reasons I just said. They do have jackfruit leaves in stock. They just I told them, hey, I did an episode. List those leaves. And so they did that. And yeah, they were out of stock yesterday, I think. And so today they're in stock again. They're from Vietnam, and they are from food-safe sources without pesticides or chemical fertilizers that are non-organic. That's a bit of a hokey definition, honestly, anywhere in the world. So I'll leave it at that, though. It's the best you're going to do anywhere. All right, guys. Well, I will talk to you later. Thanks again. You guys make this channel happen. You let me spout this crazy stuff. Like, what is crazy quarantine and crude oil piracy have to do with our aquariums? Well, it's the secret history and anthropology, sociology, economics, and science, biology, and witch wizardry that is involved. All right, guys. Take it easy. Have a good night. Thank you, lurkers, watchers, questioners, dreamers, fish keepers, and voyeurs. Sure, you're welcome here too. All right, guys, I got to go. I'm going to take it easy now. Bye.